Hoi! I'm Cybr. We played D&D again today. We took a little break with the holidays and everything, but we came back right as the players were getting into Balenpost. Last time we left off, our players had continued making their way from Serenia to Balenpost. Along this journey, they had encountered a few things that would seed into the rest of the campaign. Just other things that exist within Eiselcross that may or may not come up. And not least among these was they had to survive a significantly deadly blizzard known as a Thrim's Howl. And right whenever they were able to enter Eiselcross, or right before they were able to enter Eiselcross, they encountered a cold light walker seemingly raised from that. So the ongoing threat has been introduced. But we picked up today with them just getting into Balenpost. Warlow Akron, the head of Balenpost, had reached out to the Cobalt Soul to get somebody to help with a job. Very sus on the details. But that somebody was eventually Toph, because nobody else wanted to do it. After being held up by multiple disasters, not least of which was a viral weapon, the liaison being kidnapped by pirates, and of course having to trek literally the entire width of Eiselcross, or at least foreign, that they had finally arrived a bit later than Warlow would have wanted. So I had plenty of opportunities to make him the asshole that he comes across as in the campaign guide. Warlow was also not expecting Toph to show up with the rest of the party. Fortunately, he saw a use in all of them because a few days ago, things had progressed in Balenpost, and Nathro Arpel had, along with a former crew that he had gotten into Balenpost, and on the same expedition team, murdered their Cerberus Assembly leader and fled. So this was their big escape. Now Warlow needs them captured. So he conveniently has these adventurers show up, and it's just like, oh shit, let's capitalize on this, because I need people to be made examples of. That was great, and that is, I think that is the thread that the party is pulling on right now. However, that is not what he wanted to talk to Toph about, what he sent for more than a month ago. That would be the Spy Hunters adventure hook. Warlow Akron has been alerted to the fact that there are spies of the Empire smuggling their research out of Balenpost and reporting them to the Empire. And he wants Toph as an expositor, as someone in the Cobalt Soul who will root out this sort of corruption, to actually report them to him. His defense as to why this needs to happen is, well, this research is valuable, but only if we actually know what it does, only if we have researched it thoroughly. If the incomplete research notes get out, especially to the Empire, who right now is at war with the Kryn dynasty, they would likely be, arming soldiers with technology that they are not fully aware of and could be catastrophic. More so, it's just because the Assembly wants control over their research and could possibly be doing nefarious things with it, but, he wants to spend this however he needs to. But the party now is aware that, hey, we need to be looking out for some spies. The party also brought in the body of the Cold Light Walker that they had, Gregor, another person seemingly from Balenpost, and brought it back just in case, like, oh, they need to bury it or send it back, whatever. This was also fortunate because it gave me a chance to introduce a few other characters who had some plot hooks. Also, sidebar, as soon as Warlow brought them to his office, outside was Coberta Horsewell, who runs the research lab in Balenpost, who was complaining that she needs access to some geodes. This was my way of seeding the A Beautiful Mind quest from Rime of the Frost Maiden, which is just going to be it's hanging there. I'm hoping that as the Spy Hunters quest, as the players get a little bit more information there, they'll take more of an interest in what's going on with Horsewell, and a little bit more of that will come to light. And they'll also be able to trigger the third and final plot hook that's in the Eiselcross guide, the Wildmount guide. But they had this body, and so Akron summoned a few people to come look at it. Two of them were followers of the Dawnfather. There was the priest, Mishan, and Copper, who I made a matrite, basically an alchemist. Both of these characters are from Rime of the Frost Maiden, and they basically only exist to see the provisions for Mercurius quest, the one that has to deal with the Black Lodge, which I think is what we're going to hit next time. Wardrow had summoned both of them there, as well as another character, Valen Harpel, to come look at the body. It was taken to the medical tent where Mishan does his work, and they had done like some cursory, like tried some restoration, and clearly could not bring this person back. He was beyond help. Valen comes in with her own expertise, and Valen is a pretty big player in Rime of the Frost Maiden. As far as I know, she is good. She is a completely non-antagonistic force. She just happens to be a necromancer, which was good here because she could clearly tell what was happening here. Oh, this person was brought back. They are undead. That's why any attempts to revive him further would probably not be successful. But then was also able to like look in and see like, oh, there's like ice and stuff down his throat and in his veins and everything. His insides were colder than the air outside. There's like a little bit of necromancy going in here, but it's almost like more of a primordial thing, which is seeding a little bit more information into the like ongoing. Man, these blizzards might be getting more and more a problem in the future, but just sprinkling a little bit more information that might be useful later. With all of that, the party just sort of like got established in Eiselcross. They set up their tents and started like going around. They made sure to actually deliver the coffee to Deg and Underthorn of Critical Role fame, and were able to get like establish a rapport with him. He sort of told them the same thing that later in the timeline he would be able to tell the Mighty Nine about like the creatures that they would encounter. He did specifically say talk about the Yetis and like how they had a society, but instead like most of the times that he encountered them, they were either trying to scare him off or trying to kill him, which are the two modus operandi of the Alawak Yetis and just the Feral Yetis. After coming together and just talking about like the things that they need to do now that they made it to Balenpost, specifically like capturing these fugitives and rooting out these spies, they decided that within the next morning they would start going after the fugitives, since that's more time critical. Based off of the information that they got, they were told that the crew led by the now murdered assembly mage was heading northwest, closer. Which if they kept going northwest, they would eventually hit like some Aeorian ruins, maybe swing by the sanctuary, or more ruins. But they would also be heading past the Black Cabin. It came up a few times that there is a mage or an artificer named Macretius who had headed toward this lodge. I think Dagon was also able to say that the lodge was made by an Uthodurnian ranger before Balenpost was founded, which sort of mirrors its origin story in Rime of the Frost Maiden compared to like Tin Towns, but you know, a little more context for what's going on here. So if they were going after the fugitives, they would also be heading toward this landmark, this Black Cabin, realizing that, you know, that's on the way to Alawak Sanctuary, where Teague has a whole bunch of supplies that Faye went to Palebank Village, to the mainland to get. It would make a lot of sense for the party to go to Alawak Sanctuary during this trip. It would take them about 4 days to get to the sanctuary. It would take them about 2 days to get to the Black Cabin, so you know, they have some time, but it seems like they certainly had a direction figured out. And they would be starting on that trip the next morning. However, as night fell, people started going into the fort in Balenpost to play cards, just for the explorers to unwind. They realized that this would be a good opportunity to just like listen and like see what they can pick up on and see if they can deduce who the spies were. And this was the main mystery that I knew that I was going to have to prep, that I was going to need to like figure out what information, what clues could be gathered. And so literally this morning, I was listening to like a whole bunch of YouTube videos about setting up mysteries and everything. And the piece of advice that I was given multiple times was, you need to make sure that you have, for each conclusion that you are being given, you need to give 3 clues. So I'm like, okay, here's the information that I need to point to the actual spy. Cardamek, this super good explorer who always comes back with a pretty good haul, one of the best performing people, who has a group of like 4 other spies. Before they go. During the night, Teague and Toph sort of scope around the camp, because Teague, ever since triggering some wild magic in Saul's Vault, has lost fair hair. They have pine needles in place of hair. This was one of the wild magic triggers that if you triggered the casting of bark skin, your hair would turn to leaves, and while the bark skin would go away, the hair would not revert back unless it was affected by a remove curse. They didn't realize what would actually do it. They were just like, oh, we're in a place full of mages. We should be able to ask around and see if like there's any respectable mages, not necromancers, who can actually restore this. Funny thing, while they found some mages, none of them had remove curse or dispel magic prepared, and that's because the standard mage stat block doesn't have those. But if you look at Valen Harpel's stat block in Rime of the Frost Maiden, she has a spell book that does have remove curse. So she had access to it and overheard and came in and removed curse. It was toward the end of the day. She had spell slots that she didn't use. She was like, sure, I'll go ahead. Doesn't bother me any. And then she explained that, like, oh, people are playing cards. And then the party was just like, oh, well, we can actually, like, listen in. This would be good. So the party got ready to go eavesdrop. Or go play cards and see what information they can gather. I didn't know exactly how I wanted to handle this. So I asked what each of the players wanted to do. And they had some really good ideas. Like Darius wanted to gamble. Darius wanted to make money. So I'm like, okay, I got you. I know where I can pull up the Xanathar rules. We can make you a set of rules for the whole night, and we can see how this resolves. Perfect. Nil wanted to make sure that attention was being put on Darius while he was playing, and would keep on like talking up, but just like, oh shit, what's going on over there? What's going on with that game? Toph was trying to make people like them, like just making sure that like they were, being making a good impression on everybody. And Teague wanted to make sure that Faye could hear any rumors and everything that was going on because people tend to say stuff in front of kids. I had set the DC for all of these things at 13, except for Darius. Darius was I was doing the 2d10 plus 5 from Xanathar's. And I wanted it to be a thing where if they succeeded on a check, they would get a rumor that would lead them into the thing that they were going after. But if they failed, I had rumors prepared for other things going on in Balenpost that they would also be able to follow up on. So no matter what, they would be getting information. Problem is, there was not a single failed roll during that check. So they got a lot of information that seemed to point directly at Cardamek, which may have come across a little bit too easy. That's how the dice rolled. That's what people were talking about. Like, oh man, Cardamek sure came in with a like really good haul. I wonder if she kept any for herself in her tent. Oh, hey, you're looking for an extra chest. I have another one. Cardamek handed me one of hers like a while back before I got my standard issue one because she said she had a special footlocker. She didn't really need another one. Oh, I saw these two other people. They had left a round of cards like really hastily the other night. Like they had somewhere to be. It was kind of weird, but hey, I want some money. And hey, I saw like Cardamek and this other person talking. They were kind of being secretive about it. Do you think they're like, together? So they got like all of that sort of information. And then during the night, I had wanted to make it a thing where like if they went to play cards, they would be able, one of them with a pretty high perception would be able to notice that like there's a group of people that seem to get up and leave within like a minute of each other, and be able to follow them. They noticed this, and Nil and Teague actually did go. Teague in the form of a spider. Unfortunately, highly trained spies know whenever they're being tailed, and were able to figure out that Nil was following them. I called for one more check to see if Nil could pick up that he's been made, and he rolled a natural 1. Nil has the dark bargain, or the dark gift of Gathered Whispers, which means that if he rolls a natural 1, he needs to roll for another effect to happen. This could be good, like getting a d4 for the next time you roll. Instead, he rolled being frightened of the nearest creature, which in this case was Teague. And so he slung Teague in the form of a spider off of his legs and in the direction of the spies that had made him, and was able to like brush it off because like everybody saw this big spider and they're like, oh shit, man, I didn't think the spiders got it up here. Oh shit, I saw a huge ass spider near some ruins, which is also a thing in Critical Role. They find a big dead spider. So unfortunately, Nil was not able to follow through on this lead, but Spider Teague was. I called for a perception check. They rolled a 12, so they weren't able to get a good like look at anybody. In fact, it was a point that they were not able to put voices to faces or faces to names. So even though they know that like this tent has the spies in it. And they definitely heard that something about like, oh, I'm going to send a report. So they know that like this is the channel where information is being smuggled out of. They don't actually have the name of Cardamek pinned to the actual thing, but they know where the tent is. They went back, everybody regrouped and debriefed each other and decided that the next day before they head out they would like go talk to somebody before they would like turn in the names. They decided to go talk to Dagon again and see if he's able to describe all the people, and he is. And so right now they do have a pretty good idea of at least 3 of the spies. They still need to figure out the other names. They also made it come across as if they had something else to deliver to one of the other spies. Her name was Gertrude. And this sort of like ticked an alarm in Dagon's head, because out of everybody in Balenpost, he was the only person that he thought of that anybody in Serenia would be sending things to. Definitely not Gertrude. So whenever he asked, Darius came up with like, oh, well, there's this guy who was outside of Serenia who had blue eyes. He sort of wasn't dressed for the cold weather, but wasn't really chilly. He was traveling with a trade caravan. And I rolled to see if Dagon would recognize this person. He did not. But I thought that was very clutch. It's also going to bite them in the ass. First off, it doesn't. Dagon does not immediately, think that anything's wrong, because like, oh, well, okay, well, there's this guy who's clearly not from Uthadern, who seems to know people. That makes sense. But he's a decent enough guy. If he sees Gertrude and like makes small talk, he might, like, oh, did that group that came in a couple of days ago, like, what were they delivering to you? I mean, and that's gonna raise an alarm. It's not gonna get them in deep water, but I really want that second part of the Spy Hunter's quest to trigger, because the characters know that they've been hired to root out the spies, but they haven't gotten the spies side of the story. And if they're not going to confront the spies are definitely going to confront them. And now there is a path for them to have been alerted. As a surprise tool that I get to use later. But it was also great because now Dagon has like a thing going on where they have presented this reputation as like being, couriers, deliverers to Dagon, along with, being mercenaries and adventurers. And if the characters didn't hear it, at least Dagon could have, that Copper, one of the matriarchs who was introduced, they investigated the body, they were there at the medic tent. Copper needs to deliver some provisions to his friend Macretius, who is in the Black Lodge. And so Dagon, presented this to them. It's just like, hey, if you're looking for more work, I heard that the little fella over in the medic tent needs something delivered to his friend. And the characters followed up on it and actually got the provisions from Macretius. So they triggered that quest, which means we are hitting out the Black Lodge. So hopefully the characters will get to learn a little bit more about what's going on with Schneasel over there. So we have a pretty good idea of what we get to hit up next. So we got some stuff to take care of before next time. I have to make sure that that there's a pretty good like time frame for them to catch up with Arpel's crew, and I need to make sure that the Black Lodge, everything there can, happen and make sense. I know that in the quest as written, Copper would have been with Macreadius at the Black Lodge, but I sort of rearranged that so that Copper never went there. Instead, a couple of days ago, Macreadius sort of just, left and decided to go work on this a little bit closer to where he could get a little bit more detail about the blizzard. However, I also need to start prepping what's going on with Alawak Sanctuary. There are a few encounters and everything that I want to do there, but honestly, a lot of that might be a little bit too high level for where the party is right now. Oh, absolutely. A Yeti is only CR 3. So yeah, that should be fine. There's an adventure hook with Alawak Sanctuary that has one of the Yetis trying to capture and bring in one of the feral Yetis to be converted to awaken them, to give them intelligence, so that they, the ranks of Alawak grow. It's a little sus, not gonna lie. So I need to figure out what's going on there. Unfortunately, because the party succeeded on all of the rumors, on all the intelligence gathering, I wasn't able to seed any of the other stuff. In fact, if I was doing this over again, I would just make sure that you get 3 rumors if you succeeded, you get 2 rumors if you don't, and make sure that one of those rumors was always what they were looking for. But I wasn't able to seed any of the stuff with Jander Caudron, who was my original idea for what was going on in Balenpost, but couldn't really make sense of how it would be triggering. I wasn't able to seed that there is a person missing in Balenpost who never left, and that might have something to do with Kubota Herswell's lab. I also wasn't able to seed that the fact that Valen Harpel was supposed to go on another expedition, but something was stolen from her. In Rime of the Frostmaiden, this is a family heirloom. But here, I thought it made sense for Valen to, be an explorer, to be going out into Eiselcross and going into the ruins. And in Critical Role, in Aor, there are these things called Aor Matan, which in the post-campaign 2 wrap-up, Matt sort of says, oh, well, they're kind of Exandria's versions of the Warforged. Well, Valen Harpel's thing is called a Professor, which is just this sentient thing that has a lot of information about the city of Etherin. But in the Explorer's Guide to... not the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, Eberron Rising from the Last War, there is a magic item called a Docent, which is basically a Professor Orb that gets attuned to Warforged. And it's basically a second mind that helps them do stuff. And it's supposed to be an advisor, an assistant, but it would make sense that this sort of artificial intelligence was the Professor Orb. These things seem connected to me. So it would make sense that if Valen went into one of the ruins and found one of these orbs, she would be able to take it with her, and it would help her on future expeditions. Unfortunately, it has been stolen. It has been stolen by another mage named Nass. She is another character from Rime of the Frostmaiden, and a very similar thing happens. I'm having it so Nass took the Professor Orb and went to Schneasel to see if she can figure out what's going on with the blizzard that's always over Schneasel, because no one's been able to explore it. Clearly, it must have something good there. we'll catch up with her later, but she will be in a very similar situation to Rhyme of the Frost Maiden. I'm excited to get to that, but I clearly I need to seed a few more things, and my characters need to check off a few of their own quests. Like Teague has had these supplies for a while. They were going to make it to Alawak pretty quickly. It makes sense that they were jumping around this quickly. But I think that on their next, like once they go to Alawak for a little bit and get situated there, if they are able to bring Arpol back, or Arpol's body back, I think Valen might, come to them and just be like, hey, look, y'all seem really nice. I feel like we've been pretty nice to each other. I really want to go on another expedition, and I had this thing, but it was stolen from me. I need your help. Maybe. That might be a little high level. I think because that whole quest would be pretty similar to Grim Skull, which I think is like pretty high level in Rime of the Frostmaiden. I gotta think about it. But yeah, that's where we left off. We might be playing again next week. Holiday schedules, they're really fun. But yeah, we will be back next time. I hope you enjoyed this. I've certainly been having fun talking about it. And yeah, we will be back whenever we're back. Bye.